Welcome back to the Deep Dive. You guys know we love to dig into U.S.-Canada relations.
Yeah.
And, well, things with Trump and Canada, let's just say, they're interesting.
Oh, yeah.
And we got a whole stack of news and analysis about Donald and his, shall we say, unique approach to diplomacy with our neighbors to the north. So buckle up, everyone. We're going deep into tariffs, trade wars, and honestly, probably enough political drama to make your head spin.
Yeah, it's definitely not your typical, friendly neighbors situation, that's for sure.
No, it's not.
Trump's rhetoric has been so aggressive.
Yeah.
I mean, he's even gone as far as to suggest he wants to pretty much erase the border.
Really?
Using economic leverage.
Wow, what a subtle guy.
Right.
But before we get into, the details of his master plan,
yeah,
let's just rewind a bit.
Okay.
One of the things that really jumped out at me from these sources is Trump's claim that Canada basically doesn't have a military.
Yeah.
And that they're completely reliant on the U.S. for protection.
Right, which is, well, let's just say it's not exactly accurate.
Okay.
I mean, Canada does have a military.
Right.
And while it is smaller than the U.S. military, they've been actively involved in international operations.
Right.
For example, after 9/11, Canada really stepped up in Afghanistan.
They did.
Deploying troops and resources.
Right.
You know, they lost over 150 soldiers during that conflict.
It's just crazy to me that someone could be so wrong about something like that. It's not a secret.
I know.
It's not like it's some big conspiracy that Canada has a military.
Well, it seems like what Trump was trying to do was paint a picture of Canada as being weak and dependent on the U.S.
Yeah.
Which plays into his whole America First narrative.
Totally.
You know, he wants to create this image of other countries taking advantage of America's generosity.
Right.
And that kind of justifies his aggressive tactics to get a better deal.
So basically, he's playing the "we're doing you a favor by protecting you" card.
Exactly.
Even though it's completely untrue.
Yeah.
Classic Trump.
Pretty much.
But let's actually talk about this whole taking advantage idea.
Okay.
Because the sources actually paint a very different picture of the U.S.-Canada relationship, especially when it comes to trade.
Exactly. The reality is that the U.S. and Canada have a super intertwined and mutually beneficial economic relationship.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking $3.5 billion
Right.
in goods and services exchanged daily.
Every day.
Yes, that's not a typo. Billion with a B.
Wow, that's a lot of back and forth. I mean, what's that even look like in the real world?
I mean, think about all the stuff you buy every day.
Okay.
Cars, food, electronics, energy. A huge portion of that comes from or passes through Canada.
Yeah.
And then on the flip side, Canadian businesses and consumers rely heavily on U.S. products and services.
Right.
So we're not just talking about maple syrup and hockey pucks here.
Okay.
This is a deeply integrated economic engine that benefits both countries immensely.
Yeah, and to add to that, one of the sources even pointed out that Canada is the U.S.'s largest foreign energy supplier. So this whole idea that Canada's leeching off the U.S. is just completely absurd.
It really is. The two economies are so interconnected that any attempt to disrupt that flow would have serious consequences for both sides.
Absolutely. And let's not forget about the shared undefended border.
Exactly.
That whole longest undefended border in the world thing is a pretty big deal.
Right.
Not something you want to mess with lightly.
No.
So it seems like Trump's view of the U.S.-Canada relationship is, shall we say, a bit skewed.
A little bit.
But let's actually get into his strategy here.
Yeah.
He's not just talking tough. He's actually threatening to impose a 25% tariff on Canada, which that's not exactly playing nice.
No, it's not. And that's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Because it's not just about economic posturing. This could actually have a significant impact on the Canadian economy.
Oh, yeah.
Potentially even triggering a recession.
Oh, wow. So what is Canada's response to all of this? Are they just rolling over and taking it?
Well, it's a little more complicated than that.
Okay. They're in a trickle position.
Yeah.
Especially with all the internal political changes happening at the same time.
Right.
You know, Prime Minister Trudeau's on his way out.
Yeah.
And there's a leadership race going on to see who will replace him.
Oh, yeah. I remember reading about that, talk about bad timing.
Right. So it's not totally clear who is going to be leading the charge when it comes to dealing with Trump's, let's call them negotiating tactics.
Right.
Okay.
So it's kind of like everyone's scrambling to figure out how to handle this whole situation.
Yeah.
But with no clear captain steering the ship,
Yeah.
which doesn't sound ideal.
Not Exactly.
Yeah.
It creates a lot of uncertainty. You got provincial leaders like Doug Ford and Danielle Smith trying to make their voices heard.
Yeah.
But it's kind of a free-for-all right now.
Right.
No one's really sure who's calling the shots at, like, a national level.
So it's kind of like everyone's scrambling to figure out how to handle this whole situation.
Yeah.
But with no clear captain steering the ship.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't sound ideal.
Not exactly. But here's the thing. Even with all this political turmoil, it seems like Canada's been doing some quiet prep work behind the scenes to prepare for a potential trade war.
Okay, so they're not just sitting there twiddling their thumbs.
How?
What kind of prep work are we talking about?
Well, remember how we talked about those really strong economic ties between the U.S. and Canada?
Yeah.
It turns out Canada has been strategically leveraging those connections.
Okay.
They've been reaching out to U.S. businesses,
All right.
particularly those that would be hit hard by a trade war,
Okay.
and basically saying, hey, this isn't just a Canada problem. These tariffs are going to hurt you too. Let's team up and tell Trump to back off.
Oh, that's interesting. So they're trying to get those U.S. businesses to lobby against Trump's own policies.
Exactly.
Kind of a fight fire with fire approach.
Exactly. They're trying to appeal to Trump's own America First logic by showing him how these tariffs would ultimately harm American businesses and consumers. And it's not just about playing defense.
Oh, right. We talked about retaliatory tariffs. Canada's not afraid to throw a punch back, are they?
Not at all. They've got some experience with this. Remember a few years back when Trump imposed tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum?
Yeah.
Well, Canada hit back with retaliatory tariffs of their own.
Oh, really?
Targeting specific U.S. products.
Wow.
It took about a year, but they eventually got those tariffs removed.
So they've proven they're willing to stand up to Trump's bullying tactics.
Yeah.
But even with this experience and the prep work they've been doing, this whole situation still feels incredibly precarious.
It is. We're talking about the relationship between two of the world's largest economies.
Right.
And the actions of one very unpredictable leader.
Right.
Have the potential to throw everything into disarray.
Yeah, it's almost like watching a slow-motion train wreck.
Yeah.
Something bad's about to happen, but you can't look away.
That's a pretty apt analogy.
Right.
And what makes it even more fascinating is that the stakes go beyond just economics.
Okay.
This is about the future of the U.S.-Canada relationship, which has historically been one of the most stable and cooperative in the world.
Right. That whole longest undefended border thing is a pretty big testament to that.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
the question is, can Canada find a way to navigate the situation, protect its interests, and maintain that crucial relationship, all while dealing with a leader who seems determined to disrupt the status quo?
Right. That's the million-dollar question. And honestly, I don't envy the people who have to come up with the answer.
Yeah.
But before we get into potential solutions, I think it's important to just kind of step back and really grasp the magnitude of what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
I mean, what are the potential consequences if this trade war actually happens?
Well, on the Canadian side, we've already touched on the possibility of a recession.
Right.
A 25% tariff on Canadian exports would be a huge blow,
Yeah.
potentially leading to job losses, business closures, and a significant decline in economic activity.
And what about the impact on the U.S.? Surely we wouldn't escape unscathed, right?
Definitely not. Remember that $3.5 billion in daily trade we talked about? Well, a disruption of that magnitude would send shockwaves through the U.S. economy as well.
So what? We'd be paying more for everything.
It's very likely. We're talking price hikes on everything, from cars and lumber to food and energy, and it's not just about consumers.
Right.
American businesses that rely on Canadian suppliers would face major challenges,
Yeah.
potentially leading to production delays, shortages, and even layoffs.
So it's really a lose-lose situation for everyone involved.
It is, and that's why it's so important to understand the complexities of this issue. It's not as simple as Trump makes it out to be.
Right.
This isn't just about winning a trade war. The potential consequences are far-reaching and could have a lasting impact on both countries.
Yeah. It's kind of terrifying, honestly. But all this talk about doom and gloom is making me wonder, is there any hope for a positive outcome here?
That's the question, isn't it? Can Canada and the U.S. find a way to navigate this turbulent period and emerge with their relationship intact?
Right.
Or will Trump's actions leave a permanent scar on the bond between these two nations?
Well, we've got one more section of this deep dive to go.
Okay.
And I'm hoping we can shed some light on those very questions.
Yeah.
So stick with us. We'll be right back after a quick.
Mm-hmm.
Just kidding. We don't do breaks here.
Right.
Let's jump right into the final part of our analysis. Okay, so we've established that Trump's trade war threats are a pretty big deal,
Yeah.
with potentially disastrous consequences for both Canada and the U.S.
Right.
But, like, what can Canada actually do about it? Is there any way they can come out of this on top?
Well, there's no easy answer.
Right.
It's like trying to play chess with someone who keeps changing the rules in the middle of the game.
Yeah. Good luck trying to come up with a winning strategy against that.
Exactly, but Canada does have a few options.
Okay.
And we've already seen them starting to employ some of them.
Right.
Remember those outreach efforts to U.S. businesses?
Yeah.
That's a key part of their strategy.
Right. That whole, hey, this hurts you too approach.
Right.
It's like a smart move.
It is. By building alliances with American businesses that have a vested interest in maintaining strong trade ties with Canada.
Yeah.
They're creating pressure from within the U.S. itself.
Right.
It's a way to counter Trump's narrative
Right.
and show that his actions could backfire on his own people.
And then there's the whole retaliatory tariff option.
Yeah.
Which they've already proven they're not afraid to use.
Exactly. Canada has shown that it's willing to fight back.
Yeah.
And they've had success with this tactic in the past.
Right.
But it's a risky move.
It is.
Because it could escalate the conflict and lead to a full-blown trade war.
Right.
Which nobody wants.
So it's a delicate balancing act.
It is.
They need to stand up for themselves without, like, provoking Trump too much.
Right.
Is there anything else they can do?
Well, one option is to just try to wait Trump out.
Okay.
His presidency isn't going to last forever.
True.
And there's a chance that a future administration would take a more reasonable approach to trade relations.
Yeah, but that's a long game, though.
It is.
And there's no guarantee that it would pay off.
True. And in the meantime, Canada's economy would be suffering.
Right.
So it's a tough call.
Yeah, it is.
There's also the option of trying to appeal to international organizations,
Oh.
like the World Trade Organization,
All right.
to kind of mediate the dispute.
That sounds like a long shot, to be honest.
It might be, but it's still a possibility.
Okay.
The point is, Canada has a few different paths it can take, each with its own risks and rewards.
Right.
The big question is, which path will they choose?
And with their leadership in flux,
Right.
it's hard to say what direction they'll ultimately take.
It is.
But I think the key takeaway here is that this situation is incredibly complex.
Absolutely.
With no easy answers.
No.
It's a reminder that international relations are a delicate dance.
Yeah.
And when you've got a volatile player like Trump in the mix,
Right.
things can get pretty messy.
Absolutely. And it underscores the importance of having clear and consistent leadership.
Yeah.
Especially during times of crisis.
Well, we've dissected the situation.
Yeah.
We've explored the potential consequences.
Right.
And we've pondered Canada's options.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the most important question is, what does this all mean for the future of the U.S.-Canada relationship?
That's the million-dollar question. And honestly, it's hard to say. The relationship has weathered storms before, but this feels different.
It does feel like something's shifted. And it's not just about trade.
Right.
It's about trust, respect, and a shared sense of values.
Exactly. And those are things that can be very difficult to rebuild once they're broken.
So what's the prognosis?
Yeah.
Are we headed for a full-blown diplomatic meltdown?
I don't think anyone has a crystal ball.
Right.
But it's definitely a possibility. The outcome depends on a lot of factors, including Canada's response, the actions of the U.S. Congress, and, of course, the unpredictable whims of Donald Trump.
Well, that's a comforting thought.
Yeah.
So basically, we're all just along for the ride, hoping for the best, but bracing for the worst.
Pretty much. But that's the nature of geopolitics. It's a constantly evolving landscape, and there are always going to be challenges and uncertainties.
Well, I don't know about you, but I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed by all this doom and gloom.
Yeah.
Maybe we should end on a slightly more positive note.
Okay.
Any glimmer of hope you can offer?
Well, I think it's important to remember that the U.S.-Canada relationship is built on a long history of cooperation and shared interests.
Okay.
Those ties run deep and they're not easily severed.
So you're saying there's still a chance?
There's always a chance. And I think both countries recognize the importance of finding a way to work together, even in the face of these challenges. Ultimately, it's in everyone's best interest to find a solution that preserves the stability and prosperity of both nations.
Well, that's a slightly more optimistic outlook.
Yeah.
I'll choose to cling to that shred of hope. But I think it's safe to say that the U.S.-Canada relationship is at a crossroads. And the decisions made in the coming months will have far-reaching consequences.
Absolutely. This is a defining moment, and it will be fascinating to see how it all unfolds.
All right, well, we've done our best to unpack this complex and, frankly, a bit unsettling situation.
Yeah.
We've explored the history, the economics, the politics, and the potential consequences of this brewing trade war.
Right.
But now we want to hear from you.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on this situation? Do you think Canada can successfully navigate these challenges? What do you think the future holds for the U.S.-Canada relationship?
It's a good question.
Head down to the comment section and let us know what you think.
Yeah.
We love hearing your perspectives.
We do.
And this is a conversation that deserves to be had.
Absolutely.
And in the meantime, stay informed, stay engaged, and stay curious.
Stay safe out there.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of U.S.-Canada relations.
It was a pleasure.
Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more insightful and thought-provoking content. Until next time.